In this video help, I'm going to be updating Equipment Service Management Pro 13 to show new features that were introduced on October 9th. This video can be viewed by clicking on the icons that say Video Help in the different screens. The main reason for changing this application is that we're adding a new interface where the app map is going to be replacing all the icons that used to stand in this area. There are also changes on the appointment screen, which we'll be covering in the next video, but I want to point out the changes in this particular screen first. If this is the first time you're viewing this video, this is the application Equipment Service Management Pro v13, and you might call this 0.01 if you want to make this a new features version. What I want to point out in this particular screen is if you are viewing this video, that this application uses a calendar as the first screen when you open it up. The point of the calendar is to provide you an interface where you can add different appointments, events, and tasks that can show up on these rows within each level, which is daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or a list view. On this application, this calendar was added as a add-on, so there is a icon over here in the corner of the screen that has a question mark with a circle in gray around it. If you click this, it'll give you the basic usage of the items that are listed on the basic app and how to use them, like the calendars, the different phases of the calendar, how to use the area down here, which is the small calendar, and the preference profile and re-login down here at the bottom. It explains all of that and how it works. I want to point out that when I logged in as the administrator, who is the developer of the application. If you are using this application and you are one of the many people that might be in the calendar, in this case I've got one sample person, Andrew, and then I have these other things that are different calendars that are set up to be able to run the application, where the service entity, which we're speaking about up here, is based on the contact calendar, delivery calendar, dispatch calendar, the manager admin, which is the person that has rights to actually add other users. The rest of these calendars do not have that right. Then there's the move equipment app, the pickup calendar, and the service cal. Now all of these different calendars are default ones that are added to the application. If you want to have these changed or replaced to do what you need them to do, or add a specific user like Andrew was added here, or the project manager or manager admin was added, you would do that through the users by adding a user. And let's go over there and take a look at this. This is the user part of the application where you can see the different users and calendars that have been added. In this case, if I wanted to change this particular person, I could click on this and bring up a dialog that allows me to change it. And I could say, for example, default, and the second name would be user, and I would change it from Andrew to user. Now what's going to happen, because I am an administrator, I can change these different things. For example, I can take out his email, and then I can put in his role. In this case, I'm going to call him a user, not an administrator. And when I say close, it's going to ask me for his password. And you can create whatever password you want to. In this case, I'm going to call it user123 with a capital U. And then I'm going to go say OK. And then what happens now, the default user is no longer the one that you were seeing. It is now user default. And if I go back to the main calendar again, and I drop it down, you'll see now that there's a default user in here instead of Andrew. So that's how you add or edit the users if you have administrative rights. The manager, in this case, the manager admin, would be the person that would have the rights to change the calendar. And you'd have to know the username and password in order to be able to edit or add users. The next thing I want to point out is that if you're using the calendar and you want to go a day forward or a day backward, use these or the current date by clicking in the center. There's a search field up here. You could type any phrase for any of the events or activities that are in the daily appointments. Type that in and then click on the hourglass here and say, then it'll show all the events for that particular calendar or calendars, whatever event you're in, like weekly, monthly, yearly, it would bring up that on those calendars so you could see them also. Okay, let's talk about some of the other things on this screen that you do have the access to, but you should not be changing. For example, under the multi-user, this allows you to change the language that is used in the screens by each one of the buttons. And this is a fairly advanced thing to try to do, and it would require somebody like the administrator, who is the designer of the application, to be able to use those to get them to work properly. So if you do want to change those and you need to have those changed, I suggest you contact the developer to have those changed, and they can walk you through that. Most cases you can use the help that's on board here to go ahead and get assistance with doing some stuff like that. But if you screw it up, you have a real mess to try to figure out if you didn't do it correctly. If there's an appointment already on the calendar, like let's go back to the prior month, if there were previous events like in September or whatever, and they were samples, they would have an underline underneath them saying that there was an event on that particular time for that particular month and date. In this case, what we're going to do on the next event is we're going to create a new appointment by clicking on the new, and then it's going to add a new thing here, but it's going to bring up a different screen, which is an appointment, add new, and we're going to add a new appointment. And I want to point out that at the same time we'll be covering things like why there would be an expired appointment, and also how to navigate through the calendar and get information as far as that's concerned. Profiles and preferences, you can take a look at those and use the help on board here to get some idea what they do, but in most cases, and I suggest there's one in the profiles where you, if you wanted to, you could add an email, and every time an event is changed for that person who logged in under that particular user, it would send an email saying that there's been a change to the calendar that affects you. That is okay if you don't have a lot of those happening. But if you have one that's going to be changing all through the day, and many of them, it can be a nuisance more than a help, because every time you turn around, you're getting an email that there's been an event change, and it may or may not be something you want to do. I suggest you kind of look at it and make up your own mind if that's something you really want to do. The next thing we want to do is explain the expired appointments, and we'll cover this again when we actually have an appointment. But if you have a date, a start and end date, and you don't complete it by the time that start and end date is concluded, it will put it over here as expired and put them in red, showing that they are not completed and they need to be completed. Okay, let's cover the last thing on this screen, and that is the navigation, app navigation by the app map. And what we're going to do is we're going to be covering all these different screens and how they work. But there are two screens that are, or actually three in this case, that are probably the most primary ones you're going to use, and they're in green, which is the customer information, equipment inventory, and purchase orders. The expenses is a kind of an elective type of thing along with employees. Some people use them in this application, and other people feel that they are very important. And then there's one that is in red, which is the long invoice. And the long invoice is both a work order and a invoice, where there is an actual work order over here. They work in conjunction with each other when you set them up. We're going to be talking a lot about those because they're very important to the entire application. But in this case, these are the different screens, and you can navigate anywhere in the application. But if you're adding new records, you should only be adding new records in the ones that have green on them. These are default and what they are called as the parent records on those screens. So when you're creating new parent records, the rest of these are subordinate screens below them, and they are only created when you have to add a new record. And we'll talk more about that as we go through those different screens. If you have any questions, the best way to get answers is to contact me through the ontargetsolutions.biz. Go to the FAQ drop down and click on the FAQ, frequently asked questions link. And when it opens up at the right hand side of the screen, there will be a question where you request an answer. You'd put in your name and email address and the question description, and that email goes directly to the developer so that they can answer those questions immediately for you. We try to answer all questions within 1 hour, except for on weekends where we answer them as available. And we are around from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time in the USA if you need to get questions answered. Thank you.